This conference will now be recorded.
We're good to go, James?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. In accordance with Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.127, this February 2nd, 2022 meeting of the KTMPO Technical Advisory Committee is called to order via video conference call at 9:31 a.m. In order to meet state law requirements, staff will now conduct a roll call of members to confirm the presence of a quorum. Please ensure that your video and audio is on and remains active for the duration of today's meeting. Any member not visible cannot be counted as present. James, can you please conduct the roll?
Yes, thanks, Ryan. I'm going to go through our list and say the voting member's name. If you're attending as a proxy, please state your name when I get to your entity. Bob Van Til.
Present.
Thanks, Bob. Robert Lewis.
Present.
Lewis.
I'm here. Thank you.
Christina Ramirez. Kent Cagle. Jason Beckman.
Present.
Brian Neves.
Here.
Judge Roger Miller.
Here.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioner Bobby Carroll.
David Williams, for proxy.
Thank you, David. Daryl Bertner.
Present.
Victor Gable.
I'm here.
Jason Scantling. We have a quorum. Right.
We do have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In an effort to minimize disruptions, the following guidelines will apply to today's meeting. Please mute your microphones at all times unless you are speaking. A pause will be provided following each item to allow for comments and questions. Please clearly identify yourself if you wish to make a comment or ask a question during the meeting. The chat feature should only be used for technical assistance or to notify staff if you wish to speak. Because of state law requirements for live communication, no business communication should be conducted via the chat feature. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be later posted to the KTMPO website. Thank you. We will now move to agenda item 2, which is the opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody on the line from the public that would like to address the TAC? Seeing none, we don't have any in person either. Do we have any notices that came in, James?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay, seeing none, we will move to agenda item 3, which is the staff update. This is pages 6 through 8 in your packet and on the screen. We have the upcoming meetings. The February 16th policy board meeting will be a video conference meeting such as this one. As for the March and April meetings, those will be determined at a later date, but they are planned to be in-person meetings at this time. K-Tempo will be undergoing our federal certification review. I talked about this the last couple meetings. This is a requirement that every 4 years, the Secretary of the U.S. DOT must certify each NPO serving a TMA, which is a transportation management area, and to ensure that we are carrying out the metropolitan planning process in adherence with federal statutes and regulations. FTA and federal highways conduct a review of the metropolitan planning process within each TMA and jointly issue a certification on behalf of the DOT once that is finalized. Like I said, we're still working through some of that. They're still doing the desk audit. We have not received any information or request for information on that. And we'll keep you posted as we continue to move through the process of this certification review. We have three administrative amendments. There are the D4502 project, which is the Troy Mays Middle School Safe Routes to School. The let date on that changed from 2021 to 2022. T40-13A, the Georgetown Railroad Trails Project. That let date also got pushed from 2022 to 2023. And T4518, which is the SH95 Turn Lanes Project, that let date changed from 2022 to 2023. At this time, we do not see any financial impact with those administrative amendments. The air quality readings are on the screen. They were 56 and 54 parts per billion. And with that, I have no further update, but I am open for any questions anyone may have. Seeing no questions, we will move to agenda item 4. This is an action item regarding approval of the minutes from the January 5th, 2022 meeting. Those are on pages 10 through 12 in your packet and on the screen. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Changes needed? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Move for approval. This is Bobby Lewis.
This is Jason Deckman. I'll second.
Do we have a motion and a second? James?
Yes, Bobby Lewis motion and Jason Deckman seconded.
At the top of the minutes, it says Wednesday, December 1.
Yeah. That was the date of the last meeting, right, James? December
No,
1st?
that's incorrect. I'll make that change. It's January 5th. Sorry.
We've got one change to the minutes, January 5th instead of December 1st. Apologies for that. We will get that corrected. Do we need a new motion to approve the minutes with the changes recommended?
Yeah, or if Bobby and Jason would just make the motion again.
So move.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or changes needed? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. All right, agenda item 5 is a discussion and action item regarding resolution 2022-02, supporting the safety performance measure targets, PM1 for the region. This is pages 14 through 18. This is an annual requirement for us, for the NPO to set safety performance targets. Since January 2018, Killeen-Temple has adopted the state safety targets. We just feel we have a lack of data available for our region currently to be able to set specific targets at this time. Hopefully in the next year or two, we'll have that data and we'll be able to set our own targets. It's a staff recommendation at this time to recommend approval of a resolution adopting the state's targets with the 5-year rolling average that was provided by the state. That is also in your packet. The next page is the resolution, and the following 2 pages are the actual 3 pages are the safety targets that were sent out by the state. Like I said, we adopt the 5-year rolling average, not the actual 2022 target. With that, I will try to answer any questions.
You, Ryan, this is Bob Van Til.
Yes, sir.
When I was reading through this, I had a small degree of consternation in seeing those targets. It almost appears to me that, and I wouldn't necessarily want to rest on this word, but to condone a certain level of failure in the system that we have in Texas, by advocating certain numbers for deaths and injuries and so on and so forth. And I fully understand what we're doing here, but I hope at one point in time, particularly when we have the opportunity to do some local numbers, that we strive for things like 0, as opposed to, accepting a level of mortality, 2 or 3,000 or 16,000 or so on and so forth.
I think, Bob, what you'll see is when we do adopt our own, you'll see a significant difference in the numbers. We can strive for 0, but at the end of the day, I think we also need to have a reasonable expectation through the region as we work toward the number 0. As it is right now, these are statewide safety targets, just so everybody's aware. They're not just for our MPO region.
Yes, and I think this particular philosophy of planning is to some extent flawed, because we accept some mediocrity in the systems that we design and operate, and I think and I hope that the state would accept a larger challenge to be more aggressive in their planning process to make our state a much safer and better place to travel around, and certainly to live in. So anyway, I just wanted to share those comments and maybe spark some thoughts among the members, and maybe through our text thought or what have you. I mean, I don't pretend to have any clout, but just to be more visionary, if I may say that. And because if we push or if we challenge ourselves more, then maybe more will happen. That's all I'm going to say. But thanks for the opportunity to share those thoughts. Every time we see numbers that kind of build on the status quo, I have a little bit of heartburn with that. So I'm sorry to take so much time, but I did want to share that with the group.
Bob, you make a great point, and we've talked about it over in Temple too, is that, no deaths are acceptable. It's the state's goal has been Vision 0. We put it into our plan that we're working through right now. The goal is 0. But part of, the goal is setting those targets and objectives so we can measure, okay, is what we're doing getting us towards the goal? And if we say, okay, what's the current fatality? And I can say in Temple, we had 67 over the last few years. So if we can go in another couple of years and look at, what was the rolling average? Well, now it's 50. Okay, then we're doing something. We're going in the right direction. And if the number goes up, then we're missing our target. We're either not doing enough or we're doing the wrong thing. So I think the target gives us a way to assess whether or not, objectively assess if we're getting towards that goal of 0. And if we're missing that target because those numbers are trending in the wrong direction, we need to have a hard, conversation and take a look at what we're doing. So I'm with you. It should be 0, and maybe the answer is, that language needs to be reflected in the resolution that say, the ultimate goal is 0. That's been a statewide goal, for a while. Just to have one day where there's no fatalities in the state of Texas on the road. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the last time that happened was 2007. So we're going on 14 years that we haven't had a single day without a fatality. So maybe, Ryan, if you guys could craft some language and add that to the resolution, if that's something that we can still act on that resolution today and just add that recommendation in.
We can revise the resolution.
Yeah.
With a motion to recommend approval of the board of a revised resolution to incorporate that the ultimate objective is fatality number of 0.
Yeah, and we could probably just find the language, in TxDOT safety plan, because we're using TxDOT's targets here. whereas Texas Department of Transportation goal is for 0 fatalities. And then the next whereas is targets to measure if we're getting there. And I think that, it's a simple but an important change.
Jason, that is a beautiful amendment to this resolution. And as you all know, if you don't clearly articulate either a long range or short range goal, we lose sight of what we're trying to do. And the numbers are what the numbers are, and we have to deal with those in the way that Jason so well articulated. We have to shoot for some goals. But I think if we clearly in our minds say that this is not really what we want. We don't want people killed. We don't want people injured. We don't want anybody hurt or injured. And articulating that in the resolution up front, I think is an excellent suggestion, and I applaud you for that suggestion. We may be thinking, well, what can we do at the K-Temple that would affect the rest of the state? Well, small ideas starting in modest places, and I encourage the rest of the members to always keep that in mind. Thank you.
I mean, that's one of the reasons we have the fatality and the serious injury rate is some of the project criteria is just to ensure that we're taking that into account. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a good reminder why we do this.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or suggestions, questions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-02 with the amendment that the ultimate goal is to reach 0 fatalities.
I do have a motion. Any further? Do I have a second?
This is Bob. I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any other questions or comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you all. That was really good discussion. That's what we really need out of these TAC meetings. Moving on to agenda item 6, it is a discussion item regarding a review of the draft FY 23 to 26 Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, which is pages 20 through 22 in your packet, and I will transfer this over to James.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. So I think most of you know, but the TIP is our short-range plan for projects. It's a 4-year plan, and we develop a new plan every 2 fiscal years. So our current TIP covers FY 21 to 24, and we've started a process of looking to the FY 23 to 26 period and what projects we're going to include, as well as the ones we're carrying forward that are still scheduled to let. There's a timeline in your packet, and there's also a schedule of what this process is going to look like. We have to submit our FY 23 to 26 TIP to TxDOT by June 10th, 2022. So this month we'll have some discussions as to which projects we may be able to add, and then next month we'll bring back a draft TIP for approval, and then we will need to send it to TxDOT for review before we go out for public involvement. If you're interested, here's a overall timeline that TxDOT has provided. I think the main goal of this morning's discussion is staff has been talking about projects to add, and we specifically are looking at fiscal years 25 and 26, since those are the new years being added into the TIP, and we last summer pretty fully allocated our 23 and 24 funding. You'll see at the top of of this page, there's estimates from the 2022 UTP for Cat 2, 7, and 9. And those are the numbers we're using to see what we might have available. And then there are two alternatives, and these are not staff recommendations. These are just looking at the project list and the funding scenarios that were approved in July and November last year. We looked at what projects were next in line to be funded, and then tried to fit those in accordingly. I know it's a little small. We have a couple Cat 2 projects, and those are probably going to be the Cat 2 projects that we will fund. The US 190 bypass is the first one, and that's ready to go as soon as we get it funded. And then the second one is the SH9 off-ramp from Popper's Cove. And then I think where the discussion will take place is in these next three pairs. They're in alternative 1 and alternative 2. If you look at the two lines, that's sort of the options we have, and we can mix and match. But East 6th Ave is the first livability project in the funding scenario that we could fund, and Chaparral Road is the top roadway project. Unfortunately, we cannot fund both of those, but we can fund one or the other. And then we can also, in addition to one of those projects, fund two other livability projects. And Veterans Memorial and Georgetown are the next livability project. And then after that is Commerce, Industrial, and Avenue Beach. So anybody have questions on the timeline, or we'll open the floor for discussion between the top members as to what projects people would like to be funded potentially.
This is
Hey,
just
James.
a very preliminary discussion.
Yes, Victor.
Okay, so let me just start off with the Cat 2 projects. And I apologize for this not sticking out to me earlier, but the State 9 off-ramp project, my suggestion would be not to put it into the STIP at this time, but we put it into the UTP, get it funded. There's two issues with this project that are sticking out to me. Number one, the new STIP that we're looking at is going to be 23 through 26, FY 23 through 26. And the direction that we've been given from TPP division is that they don't, at this time, because of the constraint issue that we went through a couple years ago, number one, they don't want to have, or they don't anticipate seeing any more Cat 2, 4, or 12 projects coming into this STIP cycle. And then on top of that, just the nature of this project, the scope of it, I know it's going to require right-of-way acquisition to fit that in there. In order to get right-of-way, we're going to have to go through the schematic environmental process, acquire right-of-way, relocate utilities, and then develop the actual design plans. And typically that process is anywhere from 4 to 6 years between when you actually start and you can let the project. So I'm not saying don't fund it. I'm just saying I don't see it being a feasible let project within FY 23 through 26, whether due to project readiness or TPP constraining the Cat 2, 4, and 12 funds within the STIP.
Okay, thank you, Victor. We'll hold off on that for now.
Now, having said that, we will make sure we get it in the UTP and get it listed in the UTP and get the Cat 2 funds put on it if that sounds good for the group. Okay, that's all I had.
Thanks, Victor.
Okay, any further comments, discussions, thoughts on anything James has presented?
Yeah, this is Bob from Belton. I'm not quite sure I understand what, I mean, I heard what you said. I'm not quite sure what we're looking at and what kind of action you want us to pick between alternative 1 and alternative 2. Is that what you're asking, James?
We're not taking action this time. This is more for staff's insight into where the TAC is leaning. I think we will be, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but next month we'll be taking actual action as to which projects to select. So if the TAC can come to a consensus today, not to take action, but more say, hey, we are in agreement that these 3 projects, and it doesn't have to be the 2 that we listed here, but like these are the projects we would like to be in the TIP. That would be helpful for us as we're going through and developing the actual draft TIP listing. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Well, I guess I've got to express a preference for E6, the sidewalk project there. I would like for us to stick with the ranking that we came up with, and I don't know if I'm shooting myself in the foot or not, but I'd like for us to stick to the ranking that we came up with in July. And not at the expense of any other strategy that you have developed, James. Yeah, I just want to make sure that those priorities stay in line with what we have in July. I'm not quite sure. I know it's financially constrained, and you're working with those parameters, and those are tough ones. I understand that. I just want to make sure that the group understands that we would love to see E6 on there. And I know phase 2 of the railroad, the Georgetown Railroad, is that in y'all's end, Jason, or is that in the Belton end?
That's the phase that's going to tie into the bridge that'll get us across to the Belton side.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Jason? I mean, what are you looking at there?
I agree with your first point that, we spent a lot of time and effort coming up with the prioritization, so we should stick with that. And when it came down to the funding, we shuffled some things around based on readiness, project cost, what individual cities were ready to fund. And we've been having some very, what's a good word, honest and pointed discussions about what we're going to do within the funded scope of some of our projects, both, MPO, federal funds, and just internal, because the cost of materials have been going up. And some of ours, we're going to blow through the budget, and we're going to have to go to our finance department with our hat in our hand, trying to find extra money because concrete, steel, et cetera, has all become more expensive. So with that idea in mind, we could look at, alternative 1, and you guys Belton had kind of allowed 6th Avenue project to bump down because of the cost. And we're looking at the same thing with Georgetown Railroad Trail Phase 2. If we put it in the TIP and we program the funds just to ensure that the city's prepared to take that level of funding and commit to whatever, and this has always been a deal with the AFA, any cost overruns the responsibility of the project sponsor. Just to make sure that, hey, if we're going to program 1 million, 2 million, 9 million into the TIP, that the project sponsor is going to be able to take on the rest, that the project will get completed. And I'm not saying that as against Belton or anybody. I'm just saying that it's something that's in my head right now because of the development projects that we're working through. Just something to keep in mind. If it turns out you can't do it, then hey, I'm not prepared to do that level of funding right now. But maybe we can de-scope and shuffle the money around that alternative. We've done this before. Alternative 1 becomes alternative 1A, and we work it out amongst ourselves.
Well, that's good. What kind of discussions can we have between now and next month to I guess to work this out? Yeah. I don't want to just show up on the agenda and for us to start arm wrestling at the meeting and
right.
Kind of do this quickly. I would like for us to be thoughtful about it.
So here's a question for staff is I've heard a couple people mention about whether or not a project is already ready. And between these two fairly large projects, as far as right-of-way, environmental, that kind of stuff, are they both equally ready to go, or is one more so than the other? Do we
Right.
think that it can actually break ground in this time frame?
Well, in terms of E6, yes, the answer is yes. And Georgetown, on the railroad there, I mean, I don't, it's still a ways off, but I think it can be done in that time frame.
Hey,
Yeah,
hey, Bob. I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
the one advantage of the Georgetown trails that we own the whole railroad right of way.
Yeah.
Bob, this is Victor. On the E6 project, aren't y'all needing to do like a bunch of utility relocations first or something like that?
Yes, and those are underway, or they
Okay.
will be underway here in the next couple of months. So design is well underway. I just want us to be thoughtful about it. If we're going to open up this can of worms again, I want us to have a productive and friendly conversation about maybe shifting these things around because of the expectations of our leadership. And you know, we did some heavy lifting in the summer, and I don't want all that stuff to go to waste. And I say that with the kindest intentions, so don't get me wrong on that. I just want us to have a conversation before it shows up on our agenda.
I'd like to chime in a little bit if I could. In regard to the clean projects, and I wasn't here in the summer when we were talking about Chaparral, but I mean, I know that's been in the books for a little bit. There's a negotiations because goes through Bell County, it goes through our city, and then the longer phase, you know, gets over to Harker Heights. We wanted as a late date to be the 2026, that late year, because we are starting design. Right away should be easy, and utility locates on this because it is a corridor of an existing roadway we're widening. That is an important project for us. But looking at alternative one, I see that there's Veterans Memorial Boulevard. That's actually not something that we're probably going to be ready for. So if that can be bumped later on, we're okay with that because we're still dealing with Rancier and then focusing on Chaparral. So that, at least put my 2 cents on that.
Victor, this is Ryan Haverlaw. I would really appreciate a discussion with you about C45 and talk about the timeline with you and Bobby Lewis. I really don't want to lose that out of this opportunity. That is the #1 project for our community after the expansion of US 190. And so if we can schedule some time to talk about that, I'd appreciate that before our next meeting.
Sure. Sounds like a plan.
So what can I do in the meantime to, if anything else, just to kind of satisfy my own curiosity on how to proceed? Do you have any suggestions, Ryan?
Well, you know, you spoke to priorities, and what I'd like to point out on these lists is we have the 2 top priorities. The #1 priority for roadway is listed. That's the Chaparral Road. And then E6 was the next project, so placing it top of the priority list for the livability. So what we have are the 2 top priorities, and we're going to have that discussion of the overall priority for the Cat 7 funding. You know, if we don't have to have all of this discussion today, we can have a workshop. We can, you know, sit down and chat about it some more on how we get these funds moved around. This is just a first draft of what staff has put together with the priorities and the ranking that we did in the summer with the funds that we think that we're forecasting that will be allocated. So very preliminary, but we can set up a workshop for something in a week or two prior to the next TAC meeting, if the group would like to discuss a little further. I think that meeting probably should be in person. I think it's a little better to have those kind of discussions in person. If people are comfortable with coming into the COG. We have a fairly big room where we can distance and all of that.
And you're right, I'll chime in and just add, Christina, thanks for your question about readiness, because I think that's important. Andrew, you made a comment that Veterans Memorial isn't really probably going to be ready. So that's helpful for staff because we will consider that. If a project's not going to be ready in the time frame, we don't want to consider it for funding. And that's helpful for us. To agree with you, Ryan, it does seem like East 6 and Chaparral could, or most likely will be ready or can let within the time frame, and that let date would probably be 2026. So I think that's the main discussion and we will be needing to have because we can't fund both. We can only fund one of those at this time. But for anybody like Jason, if you know Georgetown's readiness, or Bob, some of your other projects that are in there, the Commerce and Avenue H, I know those are less of a priority, but that means you know those kinds of things.
I'll throw a couple things at you. As far as Georgetown, very important project for us. So if I was to just say, take it off the list, I'd get fired. So we obviously want to see it stay on the list. Where we have some flexibility, we're moving to start work on phase 1 within the next 12 months. This phase would more than likely follow that phase. So there's probably some flexibility of which year it's funded. There's also some possibilities of how we could break phase 2 into sections. So there's a couple street crossings, there's the bridge renovation work, there's a couple new neighborhoods coming in that we work to have an option for that neighborhood to connect to the trail. That may make a good place for a phase break. So if we're looking at the higher priority projects, figure out where those fall, and then what money is available afterwards. We would absolutely work with trying to find a gap to fill, if we don't get the full amount, if there's a gap of money, can we slide in and grab a portion of that? Then we can work with our engineers to adjust our designs accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Jason. That's helpful.
Hey, Ryan, it's Christina. I have something else. So just a couple of 2 cents listening in. If Veterans Memorial isn't ready and we slide the Georgetown Railroad over to be ready, it sounds like we're still talking between 6th Avenue and Chaparral. Something else to keep in mind is the cost for the region and benefit where Chaparral doesn't have a lot built up around it yet. So right now we're talking pennies on the dollar for trying to get a bigger road section in before those developments come in. Where 6th Avenue, we're dealing with a known, and Bob, no offense or anything, it just my 2 cents looking at it. But it's a known that's not changing a whole lot. So that might be something for us to use at our discussion at the workshop.
I appreciate that. And I think that's a wonderful idea, Uriah, for us to get together and just skull this thing out and help it get ready for the next meeting.
I don't know what the consensus of the group would be. Would a Wednesday, possibly next, I don't know what schedules look like, of course. We can send a calendar invite out, or we can do a doodle poll and see what works best for everybody.
Yeah, I've got some gaps in whether we do it in person or virtual. Speaking for myself, I don't think I have a preference one way or the other. But most of my morning on the next Wednesday is free, for what it's worth. But I think let's do the doodle poll, Ryan.
And I apologize. Next Wednesday we are unavailable because we're at a statewide training. So it may be the following Wednesday, following policy board, or in the afternoon, maybe.
Okay. What's everybody think about the 16th then?
Does the afternoon work for everybody, or following policy board?
Yeah.
I'm available anytime in the morning or afternoon that day.
Same.
I think if we do it immediately following the policy board, since most of us attend that anyway, then we might get done a lot sooner. Because those are usually fairly short.
That could work, right? We do it right after the policy board.
Okay. We'll send something out with our follow-up to this meeting.
Just to be clear, essentially the conversation is going to be discussing Chaparral Road and East 6th Avenue sidewalk.
Right, and then any other insights that the local jurisdictions have on project readiness by the left dates.
Right. Yeah. And staff isn't intending, we created these alternatives based off the funding scenario, but if there are projects that are ready and we have funding available and they're lower down the list, we can try and get those in after the priority project. So, you know, any entity out there that has a project, probably a smaller project that they would like to get funded, you can bring that and present it, and we're open to those kinds of suggestions because we want to utilize our funding to the maximum we can.
James, can I ask a question before we move on?
Yes, Bob.
What is on E6, what is that 9.8 million?
That is the amount that would be programmed. We've taken into account the 20% match that the locals are required. Because that batch portion doesn't count towards our federal, the dollars that we get. That's why we have that there. And we basically, it allows us to use our dollars, push our dollars a little further.
Okay, thank you, James.
Any additional discussion? All right, seeing none. Thank you, James. We will move on to agenda item 7. In November, we started working with Kimley-Horn to develop a dashboard for the MPO. This project is basically to make transportation-related planning information available to the policymakers, planners, and the public. This dashboard is also going to house federally required performance measure data and create a better way for the public to engage with our processes. Our consultant, Kimley-Horn, is actually on the line to present on the progress to date for this dashboard. And so they're going to walk you through the safety portion of the dashboard. And then we'll open up for any questions, discussion, or any items where you think we may be hitting the mark or we may be missing the mark, because ultimately this is for everybody on the call. With that being said, I will transfer this over to Dan Molson with Kimley-Horn. Welcome, Dan.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you. So good morning. As Ryan said, my name is Dan Molson. I'm a transportation engineer with Kimley-Horn and Associates, a consulting engineering firm. My colleagues with me today on the call also Lance Ballard and Caroline Leonard. We are based out of the Austin region and have been supporting the Killeen-Temple MPO as they develop their data dashboard tool. So looking forward, our plan in working with James and Urian is to provide monthly updates going through the spring at TAC meetings for different tools that we are developing as part of this effort. The first tool that we have developed for K-Tempo and would like to present in draft format today is a tool that allows planners, policymakers, and the public to look through publicly available crash data provided through the state of Texas's crash records information system. So we've taken that data in and processed it and created a data dashboard that provides different ways to gain insights from the data based on different fields that are collected as part of the crash reporting system when law enforcement officers respond to a crash within the Killeen-Temple region. So this is just the first tool that we'll be presenting. We'll be looking at other data sources going forward into the spring, but after hearing Mr. Van Til and Mr. Deckman's discussion today regarding item number 5, looking at setting safety targets and holding and making progress on safety related targets, we think that this could be a very useful tool for policymakers, professionals, and the public alike to build insight and gain insight and make decisions that would help the region move towards that goal of 0 deaths on the roadways in the Killeen-Temple region. So as I had said before, really we're developing these tools for 3 groups. We're developing these for policymakers, such as the policy board, for professionals, so engineers, planners, law enforcement officials, to aid in their planning and identification of countermeasures to address certain transportation safety deficiencies, and the public. We want to provide a tool that the public can use to empower themselves in understanding what's going on in their communities as it relates to both safety data, as we'll show today, and other sources of data that we'll present in the coming months. So the purpose today is to walk through that safety tool. I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Leonard, who will give a walkthrough of the tool. If you would like to open up the tool, there's a link provided on page number, let me get that here, page number 24 of the agenda. The link in blue says Killeen-Temple CRIS dashboard. That'll open that dashboard up on a local internet browser if you'd like to play along with it and follow along as Caroline leads the presentation of the dashboard. And then, of course, today we'll be happy to listen to entertain any questions or comments, but at this point, I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Great, thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Caroline Leonard here with Kimley-Horn. I'm just going to go through a demonstration of how to use the dashboard and some potential use cases for looking at this data and how to manipulate the views on this dashboard. So starting with the overview page, this is what the dashboard opens up to. This is meant to be kind of an at a glance. If you want to gain insight from the subsequent pages, you can look at this page. This emphasizes some key statistics up here in the left, and then shows other visuals as well. So I wanted to use this page to demonstrate some of the interactive features of the dashboard. So one common thing throughout the pages is there will be a set of filters on the left. And as you manipulate these filters, the page updates based on that filter. And if you were to go to the other pages, that filter holds until you select clear all filters. Something else to note is the page navigation at the top. You can navigate to any page by using the tabs at the top or these arrows or these arrows. Something else to note is how to interact with the individual visualizations. If you're looking at a visual and you want to view it in a larger screen, you can right-click and select Show as Table. And that brings up the table with the source data as well as a bigger view of that visual. And this can be useful if you're trying to maybe take a screenshot of the table or the visual to include in a report or presentation. Something else to note about these visuals is that oftentimes we group some of these categories, such as crash types. There are several different angle crashes, but we grouped them into one group. So in order to see that breakdown, you can right-click on the data bar for angle crash and select drill down, and then you can see that breakdown of everything included in that group. Another thing to note with the visuals is as you hover over the data bar, you can see these tooltips brought up that detail the exact numbers that are being shown on the visual. Another thing I wanted to point out is the difference between highlighting and filtering. So as you click on different parts of the data bar, say this non-serious injury section of 1 motor vehicle crashes, that highlights the data on the page within the context of all the crashes. Say you wanted to look at just angle crashes and you wanted to customize the page for angle crashes, you would actually come to the filter, select angle crash, and that would customize the page based on angle crashes. So that's the difference there. Are there any questions so far on just the mechanics of the dashboard before I get into specifics? Okay. So moving on to the Who page. This page is emphasizing the unit types involved in crashes, as well as the drivers at fault. Something you'll notice on this page is there's these buttons that allow you to switch between the breakdown view and the total view. So the breakdown view shows, for instance, within all pedestrian crashes, 14% result in fatal injuries. And if you wanted to see the number of pedestrian crashes, you could select the totals view and see that there are a total of 540 pedestrian crashes. You can also utilize the tooltips here by hovering over that 14% and seeing that that is actually 78 crashes. The When page focuses on the date and time of the crashes, as well as the conditions at the time of the crashes, such as weather condition and light condition. So this matrix allows you to see the day of the week and the time of the day during which most of the crashes occur. So you'll see there's a heavy distribution within the PM peak hour, simply because there are more cars on the road. If you get into maybe more fatal and serious injury crashes, you can see a different pattern. You can see there's a heavy distribution of crashes within the early hours of weekends. This visual allows you to see the distribution during the days of the week as well in a different way. And if you wanted to see just Sunday, you could highlight that and you can see how that distribution looks. The Where page focuses on the location of the crashes and some of the characteristics of that location. So we have the text.roadways, whether it's an on system or off system. You have the speed limit at the location of the crash and the intersection relationship. There's also this button that allows you to switch between heat map and point map views. And something to note with any map view on this dashboard is that this visual is limited in the number of data points that it can show at one time. So if you hover over the map and you see that eye icon at the top, that indicates that it's showing a summary view and not every single data point. So if you ended up drilling down a little more, that eye would disappear and this would be showing every data point. I see a question in the chat. Can you show a contributing factor filter using the menu on the left? Sure. So let's see. So we have, actually, let me get to the Y page because that shows our breakdown of the primary contributing factors. So this is another instance where we ended up grouping items. And if you wanted to come in and see the grouping, you could right click and select drill down. So going back to the Where page, if you wanted to look at just maybe speeding crashes, you could come here and the page would customize for speeding crashes. And we'll get into a little more of that later on too. So back to the why page, other than just primary contributing factors, this page also shows the crash types, which you saw on the overview page. The key contributing factors page focuses on 3 primary contributing factors, being distracted driving, drugs and alcohol, or speeding. So this page is only showing those types of crashes. Decomposition trees is a fancy way of saying maybe breakdown flowchart. These are a couple preset views. So this shows the total number of crashes broken down by crash type, both basic and detailed, and then crash severity. You can also create a custom decomposition tree by coming in and selecting any of these attributes to drill into. So maybe you wanted to look at cloudy crashes, for instance, and you wanted to look at the severity breakdown. You could do that as well. Next, we have the safety focus areas map. So this map, there are fewer filters, but the way that you change the data being shown is by these buttons on the right. So if you wanted to look at intersection and intersection related crashes, you select this button and the page customizes. So this brings us into a couple use cases for the dashboard. Say you wanted to, say you're a representative for Killeen, you can filter by Killeen. And then if you were interested in maybe impaired driving crashes in 2020, you can really drill down into the data and see where and at what severity those crashes are occurring. You can also look at speeding crashes to target maybe speed enforcement. And you can also look at something like pedestrian crashes to see if those crashes are occurring on or around pedestrian facilities that could potentially be improved. So the custom map tab looks very similar to the previous tab, but this one is a little more customizable with filters. So rather than the preset buttons, you can come in and really create a custom view. So let's say you wanted to look at angle crashes occurring at intersections. You would come to crash type, select angle crashes, and select, where is it? Intersection crashes. And then that way you could target maybe within your region where are the intersections with the most crashes, angle crashes. Another use case for this tab is you could look at head-on crashes and see if those are occurring at any particular intersections or on frontage roads. So there are several different ways that you can view the data. These are just a couple example use cases, but I encourage you to interact with the dashboard and come up with your own ways to view the data and your own takeaways from the dashboard. And we welcome any feedback, any suggestions, but for now, are there any questions that I can answer?
This is Jason with Killeen-Temple. This is brilliant. Bottom line up front. This is fantastic. How often is this going to be updated with new annual counts?
Good question. So right now we're showing data from 2012 to 2020. We will be adding 2021 data when that becomes finalized around the May-June timeframe of this year. And then once we're done with the entire dashboard, we'll hand the keys off to K-Tempo and they'll be managing the dashboard on a yearly basis. So once a year.
Perfect. This just, like you said at the beginning, Lance, this ties right into what Bob and I were talking about. This is going to be so useful, especially with the, TxDOT's been more, I'm not the word, they've been trying to get more safety money spent through the HSIP program and have that be data driven. this is going to make it easier for the cities to have a data-driven decision process to submit those projects. This is great.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions, concerns, thoughts on the dashboard? All right, seeing none, if you do have any questions or thoughts, feel free to shoot those over to staff, and we will forward that on to Kimley-Horn. Thank you guys for presenting on that. I'm very impressed with how far it's come since we started this process.
Thank you very much, Urian. Appreciate everyone's feedback today, and like Urian said, feel free to forward any comments along, and we'll be able to address those in the coming weeks and months.
All right. Moving to agenda item 8, this is a discussion item regarding public input received through January 2022. James.
Thanks, Ryan. We have not received any public comments since our last meeting.
All right, thank you. And agenda item number 9 is member comments. Are there any members that have comments for the TAP?
I just want to thank everyone that came out to our Mobility Master Plan public meeting on the 19th. We had a great meeting, great feedback, both online and in person, and we're moving forward. That plan should be wrapped up in May. So thanks everyone that participated, and we'll keep working on safety projects.
Ryan, I don't know if you wanted to mention that all of the grants that are coming out. We had talked about funding.
So my apologies. I probably should have mentioned this in the staff update, but we are monitoring for all of the new grant programs that are going to be made available to NPOs through the IIJA/BIL. Those programs are still being pushed out. One notable program, though, that is open right now is one that many of you are familiar with. That's the RAISE grant program. The deadline to submit for that is April 14th. And we have a link in the packet that was sent out to take you directly to that program. If that can be of any assistance and you'd like to apply for that, feel free to let us know. We will also be, as we monitor for these programs, in addition to the RAISE program, we're going to be seeing if we have projects on our project list that may be potentially eligible for some of these new funds that NPOs can apply for, to take the stress off of the CAT 2, 7, and 9 funding and possibly get those funded with other dollars that may become available. I just don't know what that's going to look like right now. And with that being said, that's my member comments. My apologies. Any other member comments? All right. Seeing none, thank you, everybody. We will adjourn at 10:34.
Thank you, everyone.